UFC London is back this Saturday night as Leon Edwards takes on Sean Brady. Up and comer Sean Brady, right? So you got a former champ in Leon Edwards taking on a 17-01 fighter in Sean Brady, who basically is only lost to the champ, Bilal Muhammad. So at least these guys got something in common. We're going to get into uh, the card, preview the card, also get into several fight predictions. Also, is the UFC done with ESPN? That's the big talk. The story continues even more than a week later after the pay-per-view debacle. Volkanovski admits having self-doubt ahead of UFC 314 return. Paddy Pimblett speaks on fighting dirty fighter Michael Chandler at UFC 314. What does that even mean, right? And U.S. Visa issues. Can Hamzat Chimaev fight in America? We're going to get into that and more next.
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA Podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege.
What up? What up? This your boy Chris Cross checking in. This is the TCMMA Podcast. Now, it's been several days since you've seen me. I've been sick as a dog. Still sick. So if you hear me breathing hard throughout the podcast, it's probably because I am. We just got to get through it today. But guess what? I'm still excited. We got through last night at UFC Vegas 104. Barely. It was a rough night, again, because I've been sick, trying to just muster up the energy to keep this thing going. But we got UFC London on deck this Saturday night. Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. Very excited about this card. I mean, I'm very excited about this card. London is always exciting for some reason. I mean, it's always a great time when you got a fight going to England, London, England, and the fans are just raucous. It's wild. They're crazy. You gotta love it, and I'm looking forward to it. But before we get there into some of those predictions, we got to get into some topics today. First and foremost, is the UFC done with ESPN Plus? Dana White furious over disastrous streaming. Netflix could take over. So this has been the talk since last week when they had the debacle at UFC 313 when a lot of people couldn't get the pay-per-view. Like, imagine you're ready. You got the money. You want to buy this thing, and then you don't get to see it. And then ESPN comes out and says, we're going to show it after the fact. But by then, it's too late. And I really want UFC to stay with ESPN, but I see what's going on now. I mean, and I will tell you the truth from my perspective. When I try to watch a thing on TV, it's always, it doesn't work right. That's all I could say. There's lag, things of that nature. When I do it on the computer, I get better results. It seems like it works a little bit better, but I can imagine people are having problems with this all over the place. Now, you might be watching and saying, hey, I've had no problem with ESPN Plus, but there's been a lot of people that have had lag issues that haven't gotten to see fights, things of that nature. So could the UFC be positioning itself to leave ESPN? Well, I believe they're still in the exclusive window or close to it. I don't think ESPN wants to lose the UFC, and a lot of this stuff is just marketing, right? And they're kind of going back and forth with each other. The UFC is now in a position of trying to make a deal for the broadcasting rights for the next several years, and someone's going to have to pony up and pay big time. And the UFC is going to start positioning companies against each other. Who's going to give the biggest deal? And I guarantee by summer, we're going to hear something. But it just seems like people are upset with ESPN Plus. And that doesn't mean that they can't get it together and keep the UFC if the money is right. but I could easily see Netflix taking this thing. And really, the main reason I want ESPN Plus or ESPN itself to keep the UFC is because I like the stats. I always use the stats on ESPN. Will that continue if the UFC is not uh, in a rights deal with ESPN? I don't know. And at that point, then you got to go over to UFC.com, and it's a little bit different there. So that will be a big difference for us in terms of how we're breaking down the fights and those type of things. But we'll adjust one way or the other. We're going to adjust. So no big news on the future for the UFC broadcast rights deal. But right now, it looks like ESPN is in a little bit of trouble. Alexander Volkanovski admits having self-doubt ahead of UFC 314 return. And we've spoken on this already, and he should have doubt. He's been getting finished, it seems like, a lot. Really in back-to-back fights against Makhachev and then Topuria, who are two of the baddest dudes on the planet right now. So it's not like Volkanovski's done, but if he wants to beat Diego Lopez, he better bring his A game. And it's going to be interesting because you're going to have crowd support on both sides, but I think a lot of people are going to want to see Lopez win this fight because if Volkanovski wins, it's like, okay, you're only getting the belt back because Topuria is gone. If Lopez wins, we got a new future. So we'll see how this thing goes. But he said in an interview with ESPN recently, are you going to ask yourself, like, all right, this is unfamiliar territory, an unfamiliar feeling. Have you lost it? This is what he's asking himself. What's going on? Question mark. You must not want it anymore. Again, this happened in an interview with ESPN, and he's going through that self-doubt phase that happens after you get KO'd. Right? It's different than other sports. I mean, you literally got KO'd. These are the baddest dudes on the planet. They don't plan on getting KO'd. They know it's a possibility, but they don't plan on it. So when it happens, they start to question themselves. So can he get through it? We're going to see. But I'm going to rock with Diego Lopez in that one. A little sneak peek there. In terms of UFC 314, Paddy Pimblett speaks on fighting dirty fighter Michael Chandler at UFC 314. As he spoke to the Action Network on behalf of MMA KO, I have a simple saying, Pimblett said. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. So I don't mind. That's not really on him. Obviously, it's not a nice thing to do, but you're in a fight. That's on the referee to say to him. I was watching the second. He's talking about Michael Chandler versus Oliveira, and when Oliveira was just pounding him in the back of the head, he says that's on the referee to say to him. I was watching the second fight, with Charles the other day, and Chandler punched him in the back of the head about 12 times before the ref said, "Watch the back of the head." And I've noticed that a lot. Like, you'll see this happen in rapid succession. The ref will say, "Watch the back of the head." Well, by that time, it's too late. You know, what's the ref supposed to do? I don't know. Take a point, do something. And then we get upset when they take a point. So the ref's in a rough spot, but by the time they say something, it's too late. The fighter's already been hit in the back of the head. So, you know, you got Paddy Pimblett blasting Michael Chandler. These two are obviously going to go back and forth. It's kind of interesting that Paddy Pimblett is not fighting at UFC London, but instead UFC 314 in Miami, Florida. So they're going to miss him in London, but he's on a huge stage against a huge fighter in Michael Chandler, who we haven't seen in some time. Should be well rested. A little bit older of a fighter in Chandler taking on a younger fighter in Paddy Pimblett. Only time will tell how that fight's going to go down. Now the talk is back, right? UFC visa issues. Can Khamzat Chimaev fight in America? Well, Trump became president, and it's good for the UFC and all UFC fighters. It's not a secret, is what Guram Kudalate is saying. In terms of Dana White, he says he'll get in the U.S. I'm very confident that we can get him into the country. So you got UFC fighters like Guram Kudalate saying, yeah, he can get in. Dana White saying we're going to get him in. All this stems, and this is where politics reaches at UFC, all this stems on who the president is. I mean, it really is that simple. You know? I mean, we got a lot of issues in America, no doubt, but I would have voted for Trump just on the simple fact that Khamzat Chimaev gets to fight in the U.S., and that's my favorite fighter. We've been waiting. I mean, he's really, unfortunately, he's had some setbacks with illness and then another illness over the last 4 years. But really, the UFC has been drawing him out because they want this fight to take place in America. And when Biden was the president, you can't get Hamzat Chimaev in the country. I mean, it's a wild thing. I mean, just in terms of UFC alone, it's like, man, I can't see my favorite fighter fight for the title because of politics. Are you serious? Politics is really entering sports and the UFC like this. I'm sick of it. I'm just sick of it. So I would have took Trump just for that. Forget everything else. I'm cool with a lot of the other stuff. You know what I mean? But I would have took Trump just to see Hamza Chimaev fight in the United States, and now we're getting closer and closer to that happening. As luckily Dana White knows Trump, they're good friends, and they're going to let Hamza Chimaev into the country. And the reason he's been withheld from the country, uh, allegedly, supposedly, uh, is based off the fact that he, uh, someone he's connected to or knows, and Hamza Chimaev has switched his citizenship to other countries, trying to make this right, trying to make this happen, and it's unfortunate that politics prevent a UFC fighter from fighting in America. I mean, I can't see this happen. I mean, can you imagine like the USA is going to be in a soccer match with Brazil, but one of Brazil's fighters can't come because the president said they can't come in the country? I mean, it's a joke. So luckily, Hamza Chimaev will get into America. We will see this fight in America. Hamza Chimaev will hopefully win, and then he'll go to Abu Dhabi more than likely and defend the belt. But that seems to be the angle that he wants to take, and it seems to be where we're headed. But that's where we are right now. Let Hamza in the country, please. Now, as we approach UFC London this Saturday night, you got a huge card here. 13 fights. We're 3-6 in the main event. Things aren't going well this year. I mean, they're going well in terms of the picks, but not the main event. We've been here before. It's time to rebound. Speaking of Gurham, he's fighting this Saturday in a lightweight division against Fernandez. This is Georgia versus Brazil. That's the first fight of the night. Then you got Fletcher versus Lawford, England versus Ireland. You're going to see a lot of English fighters, Irish fighters, Scottish fighters, things of that nature. You got women's strawweight division. You got Bannon versus Tomar, Ireland versus India. Look out. And for some reason, I just get excited when it's in London because you got all these crazy scenarios like Christian Leroy Duncan versus Puliev, England versus Russia. Oh, baby. Marcin Tybura versus Mick Parkin. Mick Parkin's undefeated at 10-0. Poland versus England. What type of reception is he going to get? Speaking of Mick Parkin, the guy's undefeated. Another undefeated English fighter, Loner Kavanaugh, 8-0, takes on Felipe Dos Santos, who's 8-2. You got Jai Herbert versus Chris Padilla. All the prelim fights, we still got to do predictions on. Like I said, we've been sick. I've been sick, so we're trying to get back to it. Now, as we jump into the main card, you got Nathaniel Wood versus Morgan Sherry. That prediction is done. Big time fight there. You got, and then in the lightweight division, I mean, best division in the UFC, right? You got Vucenic, 13-3 versus Chris Duncan, 12-2. England versus Scotland. Oh, baby. I just like that situation. But then as we get to the first prediction of the day, and I say day because this is going down during the daytime. The sun will be shining. Well, actually, no, in England, it's going to be different hours. But in America, the sun will be shining. That's right. You got Meatball Molly, that is, Meatball Molly McCann taking on Alexia Vainara, a tough Brazilian 11-1. Oh, my goodness. Will she lose in London? Let's get to that pick right now. In the women's strawweight division at UFC London, you got Molly McCann taking on Alexia Vainara. McCann from England's 14-7, Vainara 11-1 from Brazil, and this is the ultimate play. Don't invite Brazil to the party, especially in London, right? 11-1 Brazilian, look out. They're both 5'4". Vainara 29, Molly McCann 34. So the first thing I see there is 34-36 is when the women really hit their prime. For some reason, a little bit older than the men. So Molly McCann's right there. Vainara, 5-inch reach advantage. Both stand right-handed. Thainara, 6.7 significant strikes per minute. Molly McCann, 5.4. Probably has more fights in the UFC, obviously. Thainara, 1 takedown per round. McCann, 2 every 3 rounds. So Thainara is a little bit more active with the takedowns, but they can both land them. Meatball Molly McCann, 39% takedown defense against a Brazilian looking to go to the ground if need be. Coming off the loss to Bruna Brazil, 3 takedowns to 2, lost by unanimous decision, beat Diana Belbita by armbar submission. Thainara has no takedown defense. That's because she didn't need it in her fight at the Contender Series. She won by decision, 3 takedowns to none, 101 to 46 in significant strikes. So, tough one. Very tough prediction here because Molly McCann does fight better at home, right? Seems to win most of them, beating Hannah Goldie, other fighters like that. I don't remember if Brunson Till was in England or not, but the times I've seen her fight at home, she usually wins. Now, she did lose one, I think, to Julia Stoliarenko. I believe that was in London as well. I could be wrong. But the thing is she's going to fight better at home. She's going to fight strong at home. But don't invite Brazil to the party. Check out those T-shirts too, by the way, right? I think that stands true here. I think this is a big one to prove that. You don't bring in an 11-1 Brazilian fighter to fight you at home in London. It's not going to go well. In my opinion, Thainara wins, whether it be standing or takedowns. She's going to be the more dominant fighter and get the win here to move to 12-1 women's strawweight division, UFC London. We'd love to go with Meatball Molly, but that's why we created the shirts, right? Don't invite Brazil to the party. If it's close, we're going with the Brazilian. Now, it's at home for Meatball Molly. She tends to fight better, but she has lost at home too. How good is Thainara? We're about to find out. But I don't play with the Brazilians. I do not play, especially when they're 11-1. So I look for Alexia Thainara to come in here against the home crowd and get the victory. That's just the bottom line. Now, and as we approach the big 3, you got Gunnar Nelson taking on Kevin Holland in a big welterweight division fight. So Kevin Holland now going back to welterweight. Here we go, baby. In the welterweight division at UFC London, you got Gunnar Nelson taking on Kevin Holland. And what's interesting about this one is Kevin Holland's going back down to welterweight. He's 26-13. Gunnar Nelson from Iceland, 19-5. Let's get into it. Kevin Holland, 4 inches taller at 6'3". He's 32. Nelson, 36. Holland, 9-inch reach advantage. That's considerable. He stands right-handed. Nelson is a switch stance fighter. Kevin Holland, 4.2 significant strikes per minute. I like that. To just 1.8 for Nelson. But you know what that means. Gunnar Nelson has a takedown game. He gets 2 every 3 rounds. Holland, as you know, for the most part, wants to keep the fight standing. Now, Gunnar Nelson lately has won 2 in a row, beating Brian Barberena by first-round submission. That's a big deal. Takashi Sato, a good fighter, beat him by decision. 3 takedowns to none, 44-9 in significant strikes. So this could be a problem for Kevin Holland, who's coming off back-to-back losses to Roman Dolise. First-round KO. Oof. Rainier de Ritter, first-round submission. So this guy's struggling. He did beat McCall Alexichuk, though, by first-round submission via armbar. So he can go to the ground as well. But at the same time, Gunnar Nelson's going to try to utilize that ground game and control time up against the fence to try to, wear out Kevin Holland, who should be a little weak in this fight. Going back down to Gunnar Nelson's division. So I think that's a big deal. I think that's why Gunnar Nelson is the favorite. I was trying to figure things out, but that's the way it looks. Gunnar Nelson should be the favorite. He's going to be stronger in this fight. I've made the mistake of going with Kevin Holland the last few times, I'm sure. This time I'm not going to do it. I got to go with Gunnar Nelson to get the win. He's looking for his 20th victory. I think he gets it, in my opinion. Likely with the ground game again and control up against the fence to move to 20-5 welterweight division, UFC London. So already in back-to-back fights, I'm going with a fighter that I wouldn't normally go with. Normally I'm going with Meatball Molly. Normally I'm going with Kevin Holland. But we got to keep it real. I mean, I think in this one, Gunnar Nelson is just better. Plus, Kevin Holland's trying to figure out where he's supposed to be, and he's running out of time. He's going from middleweight back to welterweight, back to middleweight, back to welterweight. And this is a fight that Gunnar Nelson has got to win. He's got to win. And maybe Kevin Holland rebounds. Who knows? We're about to find out. But this is a fight that Gunnar Nelson should and will win. But Kevin Holland's never an easy out. Now, as you jump into the co-main event, this is a big one. Big time trending fight. We haven't seen Jan Blachowicz in a while. We know Carlos Ulberg is a bad dude. Something's got to happen here. These are two huge gentlemen in the light heavyweight division who need no introduction. Let's get into it right now. In the co-main event at UFC London, you got Jan Blachowicz taking on Carlos Ulberg in a light heavyweight battle. Blachowicz 29-10, Ulberg 12-1. It's Poland versus New Zealand in this one. Ulberg 2 inches taller at 6'4". He's 34. Jan is 41. Oh my goodness. Jan 1 inch reach advantage, 78-77. Both guys stand right-handed. Ulberg doubles up Jan on the feet with 7.2 significant strikes per minute to 3.4. And both guys land like a takedown every 3 rounds. Jan 68% takedown defense. Now let's just focus on the last 2 fights really because, prior to that he was just still at least in his 30s, right? But he's lost to Alex Pereira by split decision. Okay? Split decision. Somewhat of a close fight. But Pereira led by 18 significant strikes. Gave up 3 takedowns, though, to 0 landed. Jan also fought Magomed Ankalaev to a split draw. So he's still very capable, right? And beat Alexander Rakic by 3rd round KO in 2022. So he is still very capable. Carlos Ulberg, 83% takedown defense, has beaten Volkan Ozdemir. Nice win by decision. Alonzo Menafield by KO in 12 seconds. Okay, that's what he should do. Da Woon Jung, not bad, by submission. Ihor Poteria by 1st round KO. Nikolai Negamoreno, 1st round KO. Tafan Nchukwi, 1st round KO. And man, the list goes on. And this guy has been very active, and we haven't seen him lose since he lost to Kennedy Zachukwu by 2nd round knockout. And anybody can get caught at any given time. In that fight, in the 2nd round, he got caught up in a striker's delight. He was up 146-82 in significant strikes, and again got caught. So he's got to be very cautious here because Jan is still very good. Jan is very capable. But listen, he's 41 now, and it's been a year and a half since his last fight. He didn't fight in all of 2024. So, it's hard to predict what Jan Blachowicz will look like. Carlos Ulberg is the young Energizer Bunny in this fight, and should be able to get the victory here. Although it's a cautious prediction because it's going to be very close, I think. But Carlos Ulberg is just better right now, and this is a fight he has to win if he wants to upgrade himself. It's a big notch on the resume. Even though Jan is 41, it's still a big win for the resume. So I look for Carlos Ulberg to step it up and get the win here, and he'll likely have the crowd on his side, of course. And I look for him to get the win, just in terms of activity, significant strikes. I mean, if he keeps his pace up, he's going to land over 100 significant strikes in 3 rounds, and that usually means you'll win, especially in this fight. So he wins, in my opinion, with the 13-1 light heavyweight division. Co-main event, UFC London. Yeah, so I'm looking at 2 factors. One, Carlos Ulberg is really freaking good. On the other hand, Jan Blachowicz is just getting older. We haven't seen him in some time. The clock is ticking for him, and you're not getting any younger. So you're 42 years old, right? This isn't the time when you can be fighting once every 2 years. But it's still Jan Blachowicz. He still fought the current champ to a draw, several years ago. And Ulberg's had a setback, but he's 12-1. And, It'll be interesting to see what side the crowd is on. It should be New Zealand, but we'll see. Jan Blachowicz is a well-respected fighter, but I don't think he gets a job done here. He's just getting too old. Now, as we get to the main event, oh my goodness, Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. This fight has big implications for us because we're 3-6 on the year. Now, our wins versus losses are doing just fine. We're right about where we normally are. It's not great, but it's not bad at all. I mean, we're, many more wins than losses, so we're good there. But the main event is much like last year. Remember we started 4-7. This year we're 3-6. We've lost 5 in a row. This is desperation, ladies and gentlemen. We need this pick to come through at all costs. So let's get into it right now. In the welterweight division, your main event at UFC London, you got Leon Edwards taking on 1701 Sean Brady. Leon Edwards, the former champ, he's 22-4. And the big question in this fight going in is, has Leon Edwards fallen off? Is it over? Well, we're about to find out. At least he gets to fight at home in England. He's 4 inches taller at 6'2". He's 33. Brady 32. So not much of a big age difference there. Leon Edwards 2-inch reach advantage. He fights left-handed. Sean Brady fights right-handed. Brady 4.1 significant strikes per minute. He's pretty active on the feet. Leon Edwards not so much, 2.7 per minute. Sean Brady also over 1 takedown per round. Leon Edwards just 1 every 3. So the numbers lie with Sean Brady, but this fight is even going in. Now Rocky Edwards, takedown defense 65%. That's right about the average. Lost to Bilal Muhammad. Because of that average takedown defense, he gave up 9 takedowns against Bilal Muhammad and gave up the belt. Trailed 68-47 in significant strikes. So he just got dominated in that fight. And Sean Brady will be looking to do the same thing. Before that, he beat Colby Covington by decision and back-to-back wins over Kamaru Usman, a guy we haven't seen in some time. Now, Sean Brady, 85% takedown defense. And it seems like the loss to Bilal Muhammad was recent, but it was back in 2022. Since then, he beat Kelvin Gastelum by submission and took Gilbert Burns to a decision, beating him 130-47. Wow. In significant strikes, 7 takedowns to 1. My goodness. This is a tricky prediction because on one end, you want to go with Leon Edwards because I don't think he's fallen off that much. He could very easily be the champ right now, but he struggles against guys like Bilal who can land takedowns, and that's what Sean Brady can do. Now, when Brady and Muhammad fought, there were no takedowns in that fight. It was just straight domination on the feet by Bilal Muhammad that led to the KO. But since then, he's responded again with the 2 wins. Man, I'm going to go out on a limb here because I really like Leon Edwards, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Sean Brady is going to win this fight. I just don't see how he loses. I mean, he's more active on the feet. He's way more active with takedowns. He's got an 85% takedown defense. I mean, all the numbers point towards Sean Brady. The X factor is that Leon Edwards is fighting at home. That's going to be an adrenaline boost. He's going to want to defend the home turf. The crowd's going to be going crazy. And English fighters have done well at home. But despite all that, forget about all that. I like Sean Brady. Unfortunately, I can't believe I'm even saying this, but I like Sean Brady to win this fight. You got to take the numbers serious when they're that clearly one-sided, and that's the way it is here. So I like Sean Brady to win just with takedowns, control time, and dominating in significant strikes to get the unanimous decision victory over Leon Rocky Edwards here. Main event, welterweight division, UFC London. Wow. I thought for sure I had Leon Edwards in that one. I'm surprised by my own prediction because now I got to root for the guy that's on the road. The crowd's going to be hyped for Leon Edwards. They want to see him get back to a title fight. They know, if he loses this fight, it's probably over. So the crowd is going to be highly engaged in this fight, and I'm going to need Sean Brady to run through all that and keep the numbers consistent despite having the crowd against him. But he can do it, but it's not going to be easy. So, Sean Brady, we speak your name. We need you to win this fight. I appreciate you watching. This is the TCMMA podcast. I'm your host, Chris Cross. Until next time, have a great day and God bless. As always, peace.